The echinoderms, or Echinodermata, are an animal lineage belonging to the Deuterostomia. About 6,300 modern species of echinoderms are known worldwide, making them the second largest group of animals within the Deuterostomia after the chordates. The Echinodermata are traditionally divided into 5 classes: the sea lilies and feather stars, Crinoidea; the sea stars, Asteroidea; the brittle stars, Ophiuroidea; the sea urchins, Echinoidea; and sea cucumbers, Holothuridia. In this video, the brittle stars, the sea cucumbers, the sea stars, and the sea urchins are examined and presented in detail. The ambulacral system, also called the water vascular system, is a typical feature of the Echinodermata. It consists of a system of channels inside the animals which are filled with coelomic fluid, not seawater. The channels encompass the animal's mouth and radiate outwards in 5 vessels. The water vascular system consists of the somatocele or metacele, which forms the secondary coelom, the hydrocele or mesocele, which makes the ambulacral system, and the axocele or protocele, which forms a canal between the hydrocele and the madreporite. On the outside of the animal, the ambulacral system is visible in the form of the small tentacle-like feet. The ambulacral system is a hydraulic system. With the help of liquid and small muscular ampullae inside, the Echinodermata are able to move their little feet in a targeted manner. Another component of the ambulacral system is the sieve-like madreporite. This is clearly visible on the top of the sea star and sea urchins. This small, porous structure serves to equalize the pressure by allowing an exchange of seawater. The skeleton of echinoderms consists of calcium carbonate in the form of calcite. The part of the skeleton that protects the inner soft tissues is often referred to as the shell, but unlike the calcareous shell of snails or mussels, this shell lies beneath the thin epidermis. Therefore, in contrast to the shells of most other invertebrates, it is calcareous endoskeleton. It is therefore better known as the test rather than the shell. As we will see, the test can be highly reduced in some echinoderms. The majority of the Echinodermata have small, transparent, bilaterally symmetrical larvae, which only transform into the pentaradially symmetrical adult in the course of a complicated metamorphosis. In the 5 large Echinodermata groups, different types of larvae can be distinguished from one another. Our first preparation object is a brittle star. The brittle stars are the closest relatives of the sea stars and, like them, are characterized by a secondary 5-rayed symmetry. The central disc is small, and the arms are clearly separated from it. Brittle stars have neither a rectum nor an anus. There are no suction cups on their feet, and movement is achieved by moving the whole arms, which makes brittle stars quite nimble. The animals are very sensitive to touch, and the arms are often discarded to escape predators and are usually then regenerated. The bilaterally symmetrical larvae of brittle stars are known as Pluteus larvae and live planktonically. For reproduction, brittle stars employ a wide variety of strategies. Some species reproduce sexually and have male and female individuals, while others are hermaphroditic, having both testes and ovaries. Some undergo a sexual transition, starting as male and later transitioning to female. Some species even reproduce asexually. Egg dispersal is likewise varied. Some species release the eggs into the open water. Others incubate the young in special body cavities and are thus viviparous. A complete brittle star can also be grown from just one of the 5 arms, and some species can also be bisected down the middle to regenerate into two complete animals. Some brittle stars can perceive light, although they lack both eyes and a brain, because their body surface is covered in thousands of light-sensitive cells. The second preparation object is the edible sea cucumber, Holothuria edulis. The edible sea cucumber is sometimes referred to as the pink sea cucumber or the burnt hot dog sea cucumber. The sea cucumbers are in the class Holothuroidea within the Echinodermata, with some 1,700 described species. In the deep sea, 90% of the seafloor biomass consists of sea cucumbers. Sea cucumbers are marine animals with a long, cylindrical body. The five-pointed radial symmetry typical of the rest of the Echinodermata can only be recognized externally by the 5 rows of ambulacral feet. In contrast to the other Echinodermata, sea cucumbers only have skeletal rudiments in the form of small calcite needles. That is to say, they have dramatically reduced their test. The movement of sea cucumbers is achieved by means of the ambulacral feet on the belly side. It's possible for the sea cucumber to eject part of their internal intestines in an attack as a distraction for the enemy. The sea cucumbers have separate male and female individuals and release their gametes directly into the seawater. This usually takes place synchronously within a bay. With light pressure on the body of the sea cucumber, some seawater will be ejected. Their bilaterally symmetrical larvae live planktonically and are known as auricularia. In addition to sexual reproduction, many sea cucumbers can also reproduce by dividing. By adapting to life on the sea floor, sea cucumbers have evolved bilateral symmetry secondarily. The muscular, elongated body has a mouth opening at the front end. The dark side of the sea cucumber is the dorsal side. The lighter side is the venter. The sea cucumber is now prepared to examine the internal organs. To do this, fine scissors are inserted through the anus. Cutting open through the mouth should be avoided, as this could cut the internal organs. The incision is made towards the mouth on the right or left side. Finally, a horizontal incision is made parallel to the anus. The sea cucumber is now placed in the bowl with the mouth-bearing pole facing up. The sea cucumber can now be fixed in the preparation bowl with the needles and stretched. As we have already mentioned, the endoskeleton typical of other echinoderms is greatly reduced. Instead of a skeleton, sea cucumbers have a musculodermal tube made up of longitudinal and circular muscles and a thick layer of mutable connective tissue. Immediately after the incision, the strong longitudinal muscles become visible inside. The mouth, the ring canal, and the stomach can now be recognized on the undamaged side of the sea cucumber. The longitudinal muscles pull from end to end. The digestive tract extends from the oral orifice, via the esophagus, stomach, and intestines, into the cloaca. In many species of sea cucumber, the water lung or respiratory branches are found on the intestines. The water lungs, or respiratory trees, are protuberances of the rectum. These are located in front of the anus and are paired and tubular. In addition to breathing, they also are responsible for mineral metabolism and excretion. The water lungs are called respiratory trees because of their tree-like shape. They consist of thin-walled tubes surrounded by coelomic fluid. If the anus and the entrance to the water lungs are opened, water with oxygen can get into the respiratory trees. Oxygen then diffuses from the seawater in the respiratory trees to the coelomic fluid. So respiratory trees are structures of the intestine. Water is taken up, and oxygen is extracted from it. The third preparation object is the common sea star, Asteria rubens. The common sea star occurs in all European seas except the Mediterranean. It lives in the near-shore region to a depth of no more than 200 meters. They usually have 5 arms, but there are also rarely 4 or 6-limbed individuals. Sea stars are the class Asteroidea within the Echinodermata. About 1,600 modern species of sea star are known worldwide, making them the second largest group of echinoderms after the brittle stars. The basic body shape is usually a 5-armed star, the arms of which become evenly slimmer toward the tips. However, quite a few sea stars have more than 5 arms. The number of arms can also vary within a species. Sea stars are present in the benthic zone of marine waters worldwide, ranging from the intertidal zone to the deep sea. Most sea stars have separate sexes, but show no sexual dimorphism. Several species are hermaphrodites. In the great majority of cases, fertilization takes place externally in the open sea water, and development takes place by a free-swimming bipinnaria larva that lives in the plankton feeding on microorganisms. This is followed by a larval stage called the brachyolaria, which grows additional limbs, attaches to the substrate with an adhesive disc, and then metamorphoses into a juvenile sea star. There are also asexually reproducing sea stars. Sea stars are divided into an oral and an aboral side. The aboral side has a madreporite and anus. The oral side carries the mouth. The oral side can be identified by the rows of feet in the center line of the arms. They stand in an open channel that runs to the tip of the arm, called the ambulacral furrow. Where the 5 ambulacral furrows meet, the mouth is surrounded by 5 groups of movable spines, the oral papillae. On the so-called aboral side, opposite the mouth, there is a flat, rough plate, the madreporite, between the attachment points of 2 arms, that is interradially and off-center. The anus lies in the next interradius, clockwise, only a little away from the center of the body. It is a very fine opening that is rarely visible in preserved animals and is even difficult to identify in living ones. The spiny surface is therefore not the side bearing the mouth, although it is always on top. The entire surface of the body is covered with dense, small, calcareous formations, the thorns or spines, which are generally irregularly arranged and are surrounded by a wreath of small pedicellariae. Regular rows of thorns are found in the aboral midline of the arms. In the living sea star, you can also see numerous translucent vesicles, or tubes, that serve as skin protuberances for respiration. Sea stars have tube feet. Their contraction and extension is controlled vascularly. Especially those closer to the center have terminal suction discs. The feet of the arm periphery have no suction cups. Some of them have a sensory function. For the preparation, the sea star is taken in the hand and cut around the side with fine scissors. To do this, the arms are first cut open at the sides from the tip to the base. At least one arm should not be cut, because a cross-section will be created from it later. The body wall can now be lifted by the severed arms. We can get our first glance at the pyloric glands, the gonads, the stomach, and the ampullae. The pyloric glands are greenish-gray and run into each arm with two extensions. In the walls of the pyloric glands there is glandular tissue, the cells of which secrete digestive enzymes. These also serve for resorption and storage of high-energy compounds. Now the body wall is separated. To do this, carefully approach the upper body cover of the arm from the tip and use the fine scissors to dissect the two brown tubes from the aboral cover, each of which is attached with two delicate longitudinal mesenteries. Repeat this on all of the opened arms. The pylorus is pentagonal. The narrow digestive glands, or pyloric cecae, extend from its corners in pairs into each arm. Then the aboral cover of the disc is lifted off. You begin by cutting through the gaps between the arms. The madreporite should be cut around in a circle and left attached to the lower half. Only then is the entire cover carefully removed. On the stomach, which is connected to the mouth opening through the short esophagus, an upper part, the pylorus, and a lower part, the cardia, can be distinguished, which are separated from each other by sphincters. The cardiac stomach can be everted to catch larger prey. The prey is then covered by the cardia and pre-orally killed and digestive by digestive fluid. Between each pair of arms, that is, interradially, the genital organs, testicles or ovaries, protrude freely into the body cavity as a double tuft of finger-shaped tubes. The madreporite is interspersed with numerous fine ciliate canals. They create an open connection between the coelomic system and the surrounding seawater. Through the pores of the madreporite, lined by the ciliate epithelium, liquid can flow both in and out. From the axocele ampulla, under the madreporite, the stone canal leads downwards. The stone canal owes its name to the inclusion of sclerites in its walls. You can feel this when you carefully grasp it with tweezers. The stone canal leads to the hydrocele ring canal, which rests against the inner surface of the calcium carbonate plates surrounding the mouth. From the ring canal, 5 radial canals go into the arms. They cannot be seen, however, as they immediately pass through the oral side, where they run into the bottom of the ambulacral furrows. In the next preparation step, a cross-section of the arm is created in order to identify the connection between ampullae and ambulacral feet. To do this, one arm is cut off in the middle with scissors. Inside the arm, the bifurcated pyloric ceca, which are digestive glands with highly folded walls, lie along the aboral surface, from which they are nourished, and to which they are attached with connective tissue. The ampullae lie orally from these. The ampulla canal, leading to the feet, is also clearly visible. In the ambulacral groove runs the radial canal of the ambulacral system, from which the foot canals to the feet and the ampullae branch off on the right and left. These fine channels are only occasionally visible in a cross-section. Valve flaps inside the foot canal prevent the liquid contained in it from flowing into the radial canal when the ampulla contracts. It is pressed into the foot, which is thereby stretched out and is used for locomotion. The ampullae are light-colored vesicles with a muscular wall that run along the arm in 2 pairs of close rows. Each ampulla communicates orally through the ampulla canal with the cavity of a tube foot. Feet and ampullae communicate with the radial canal through the horizontal foot canal. The sea star can also hold onto the substrate using the suction cups on their feet. The preparation can now be drawn. For this, as many different perspectives as possible should be chosen. A truncated arm, a cleared arm, a complete arm, an arm with no pyloric glands, and a complete but cut arm. To draw the ambulacral system, the stomach and pyloric glands should be completely removed. Another sea star preparation of the common sea star illustrates the great regenerative capacity of the sea star. This preparation clearly shows 2 small regenerating arms, which are much smaller and more inconspicuous in comparison to the adult arms. The arms of the sea star can be regenerated if they are lost, and a whole animal can regenerate itself from individual arms. This is used by the sea star in extremely unfavorable living conditions for asexual reproduction by shedding individual arms. This type of asexual reproduction is also called fissiparia. In addition to sea stars, fissiparia is also known to be found in sea lilies, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, and brittle stars. This specimen is prepared as already shown in the first sea star preparation. In this preparation, the gonads are very pronounced. However, it is still not possible to distinguish male and female animals from one another externally or on the basis of the gonads, as there is no sexual dimorphism. Only by looking at the gonads and gametes under a microscope can the sexes be distinguished. This renders the intestinal system exposed. In the middle of the body lies the thin-walled, bladder-like stomach, which is suspended from the body wall by a number of aboral ligaments. Even stronger ligaments can be found on the oral side, where they are arranged in pairs and extend a little way into each arm. We will now examine the rectum or anus and the associated rectal diverticula. The intestinal tract itself is not pentaradial in Echinodermata. It runs from oral to aboral and is very short in the star-shaped classes, such as the sea star, but expands to a spacious stomach from which ceca with glandular walls can extend far into the arms. These are the pyloric ceca we have already seen. In addition to the rectum, the cauliflower-shaped rectal diverticula can be seen. Like in the brittle stars, some sea stars lack an anus. The next preparation object is the sand dollar, which is an unusual sea urchin. The sea urchins form the class Echinoidea within the Echinodermata. They occur in all seas. About 950 species are known to date. The spines of the sea urchin are made of calcite and are mostly also below the epidermis. They sit on small bumps that form ball and socket joints, and muscles can move them in all directions. The formation of the spines, their size and function, can be very different depending on the species. The feeding apparatus of sea urchins is known as the Aristotle's lantern. It is a chewing apparatus composed of 5 calcium carbonate plates surrounding a fleshy, tongue-like structure. The lantern ends in the esophagus, which runs in a curve outside the lantern into the small intestine, large intestine, and ultimately the rectum, before exiting by the aboral anus. Sea urchins are dioecious, that is, they have separate male and female individuals. Egg and sperm cells are released into the water in large quantities. The planktonic, bilaterally symmetrical larva of the sea urchin is known as the Pluteus larva, like in brittle stars. A special feature of Pluteus larvae are the long extensions that are supported by skeletal rods. These live as free-swimming organisms in the pelagic plankton. The appendages are closer together in sea urchin larvae than they are in brittle star larvae. The skeleton, or test, of typical sea urchins, which are covered in long spines, is characterized by regular 5-ray pentaradial symmetry. It essentially consists of 5 double rows of ambulacral plates and 5 double rows of interambulacral plates. The individual plates each have the shape of an irregular pentagon or hexagon. The ambulacral plates are smaller than the interambulacral plates and contain small holes through which the inner parts of the ambulacral feet can pass. Both ambulacral and interambulacral plates have round articular cusps that serve as articulations for the spines. Like the starfish, urchins have long tube feet that they use for locomotion, which are powered by the ambulacral system. The animals grouped under the name irregular sea urchins, formerly the subclass Irregularia, which also include the sand dollar and the heart urchin, differ significantly from the typical sea urchins. Spines are greatly reduced in size, but not in their number, so that from afar the spines look like fine hairs. These differences in morphology arose as an adaptation to a burrowing lifestyle. Their skeleton is often flattened, particularly extreme in the case of sand dollars, and not radially symmetrical, but bilaterally symmetrical, although the original pentaradial symmetry can still be seen. The anus and mouth are on one side, the underside. This concludes our overview of the Echinodermata, the second largest clade of Deuterostomia. We have seen several key features that define this clade, such as their typically pentaradial symmetry that arises from bilaterally symmetrical larvae, their calcite test in its various different forms, and the different ways in which the major clades have repurposed the water vascular system. It was unfortunately not possible to include the interesting crinoidea, the feather stars and sea lilies, in this overview, but these are yet another extension of the echinoderm body plan. Echinoderms are so remarkable a group that comparisons to other groups are difficult, so we encourage you to contrast the main features of the Echinodermata with those of the most familiar other deuterostomes, such as the various vertebrata, the tunicata, and the cephalocordata.